Welcome back to the Friday Show. This week presented by Kentucky Equine Research, worldwide leaders in equine nutrition. I'm Ray Paulick with Joe Nevills, Bloodstock editor of the Paulick Report. Joe, we're in uncharted waters, not just in our business, the horse business, but civilization. I mean, this is like nothing I have ever seen in my lifetime, and we don't really know how it ends. Let's face it. Nobody knows anything, as William Goldman said once. So, the racing industry is kind of in a shambles as far as so many tracks are closed out of necessity. A few tracks are still able to operate. They've made extraordinary changes to their protocols. But the one thing that we haven't talked about at all is the bloodstock market, which is your expertise. How is all of this going to affect the breeding industry and bloodstock sales?
At this point, I think a lot of that is still to be seen. We're so early on into what this virus could do, what it already has done, and what it stands to do to the market itself. I mean, in terms of both the stock market and the bloodstock market. This could be the kind of thing where a lot of sales have already rescheduled, and if those stay to where they are now, perhaps things run to relatively what they might have already. But if this continues to be an extended thing and perhaps those sales even have to get pushed back even further, who knows how long this could affect the marketplace.
Yeah, this is the second or third or fourth expected correction that I've seen in the 30 plus years that I've been involved in the industry. Couple things that we know is when the stock market goes south, when there's a major correction in the stock market, yearling prices usually follow. We saw that in 2008. We saw it in 1987 a little bit. But the other thing that when bloodstock prices go, there's a major correction, a major disruption, the foal crop gets smaller. In the mid 1980s, the foal crop was around 50,000 foals a year in North America. Yearling prices were sky high, and then they crashed, and it was a 7-year crash from 85 to 92, and the foal crop went down to something in the mid 30,000 range. 2008 again, when the financial meltdown happened, right in the middle of the September sale, it didn't really affect that sale so much, but it really affected November, and then the yearling prices the following 2 or 3 years declined considerably. But the good thing is they bounced back pretty quick too, and actually were well above that just a few years later.
What's going to be fascinating, though, is, as you mentioned, during that first downturn, there's 50,000 mares being bred, and we're already at historic lows when it comes to the foal crop. And I've talked to a lot of stud farm people who have said that this year was already going to be a pretty tough one to get mares to certain stallions who don't fit that certain commercial criteria. The market right now kind of knows what it wants, and it wants first-year stallions, and it wants the ultra-proven ones. And if you don't fit into one of those categories, if you're, say, a third or fourth-year sire or a veteran who, maybe hasn't achieved the loftiest of heights, you're on your Mount Rushmores with your Tappets, your Uncle Mo's, you're into Mischiefs, where you can get those, high 6-figure, 7-figure horses. You're having a hard time getting those books filled, and it's going to be interesting to see, with all of the kind of uncertainty that we're facing in the marketplace, if their jobs are going to get harder going into the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's always I think the bloodstock market is always a supply and demand thing. Mm-hmm. In the 80s, both were high, and that's why the foal crop went up so fast. All of a sudden, with tax reform, and that's what turned the market around then. Tax reform took a lot of people out of the business. There was oversupply, under demand. Now the supply is pretty low, but I have a feeling that with the stock market taking such a major hit, and other factors, let's face it, horse racing has taken a lot of hits in the last several years. We had the Santa Anita situation in 2019 with widely publicized deaths there. Just before the pandemic was called on coronavirus, we had the indictments of trainers and veterinarians and other people in the industry, and that nobody's talking about that right now. But if the market stabilizes again, to try to get people interested in buying yearlings and buying 2-year-olds to race them, there's been some real negativity surrounding the horse industry. So I'm not sure that the demand is going to be there no matter what the supply is.
And it's the kind of thing that I don't want to, get too negative worst case scenario here, but it's the kind of thing that the market is so reliant on the other portions of the market. The 2-year-old buyers buy into the yearling market. The yearling market buys into the brood mares, and it just, if one of them starts to lose a little bit of faith and starts to spend a little less, the other portions of the market are going to feel that, and you could have a ripple effect there.
Yeah, even in good years, when you've got the 2-year-old sellers buying yearlings at a high price, you still need the end user. You still need the guy that wants to race, or the woman that wants to race horses for enjoyment. It's not a winning proposition to operate a racing stable. I think most people know that. So you've got to make racing an attractive proposition for people who are the end users. You can't just have a bunch of resellers selling to each other. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of what this industry has evolved into right now.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to be kind of interesting because the sales right now are kind of a moving target, because we're not sure, a lot of the sales have been, 2-year-old sales have been moved to different dates, different locations. Fasig-Tipton has added a second Mid-Atlantic sale that they're going to be doing in June. Ocala Breeders sales has moved their 2 remaining 2-year-old sales. But Boyd Browning, president of Fasig-Tipton, put out a video recently talking about how, even the July yearling sale might be up for discussion depending on how things go. So we might see pretty quickly how the marketplace is going to shake out here in terms of the 2-year-olds going into the yearling sales, but maybe not as quickly as we think if things don't sort of move on schedule.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we know is that there's uncertainty. And
yes,
whether it's the stock market or the bloodstock market, uncertainty is never your friend. You like to be able to plan ahead, to know, even though right now the breeding industry we're in, people are breeding mares to have foals in 2021 that many of them plan to sell as yearlings in 2022. That's a long ways from now. And it's always difficult to project ahead that far to see, how much should I invest in a stud fee for this mare, because you don't really know what the market's going to be like. Right now, you really don't know what the market's going to be like in 2022.
And it might be an interesting thing to watch for a couple of years from now if what I mentioned earlier plays out and a lot of the sort of middle market stallions don't get that interest. We're going to have a larger population of, the very high end, where perhaps, the bottom of the market was already pretty tough going heading into 2020. The yearling sales, book 6 type horses were having a hard time. Same with the mixed sales. So are we going to see something in a few years where every sale looks a lot like Fasig Saratoga, where it's very select, very boutique, and a handful of, the high-end sired and brood-mared horses?
All right, well, I think we both agree that there's going to be an effect to the market. I mean, you can't have this sort of crisis affecting the equity markets, day-to-day life, without having an impact on our business. The question that I have for you and for our readers, because we're going to put a poll out there, is how long do you think this will affect the horse trading business, the bloodstock markets, the breeding side of the game?
Personally, I am going to punt the football on this. We are so early into this that if things start to clear up by, few weeks, month or so, I think the effect will be pretty mitigated. But if it's getting to be September, October, and we're still all locked in our houses, that's going to have a further reaching impact both on the stock market at large and the bloodstock market.
Well, I've seen a lot of resilience in this game. I'm betting that the correction is not going to be 1980 type of correction that lasted 7 years. I think it's going to be a lot quicker than that. It's going to be a smaller industry because every time we have one of these, it gets smaller. And let's just hope it gets back to some semblance of normalcy before too long. All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show presented by Kentucky Equine Research. Be sure and check out their video.
Horse feeds and supplements developed by Kentucky Equine Research are research tested and race proven. For over 30 years, top trainers and veterinarians have relied on science, technology, and products from Kentucky Equine Research to fuel top performance from the breeding shed to the sales ring and the track. Look for KER products and learn more at KER.com. Kentucky Equine Research, world leaders in equine nutrition.